Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to the History Shelf. I am your host, Peg. Sorry, I had to get my autofocus working. It's been a it's been a minute, hasn't it? Sorry for the delay in videos. I'm getting better. My voice is back. Still have a little bit of a wheeze in my chest sometimes. What a wicked chest cold and head cold I had. We both had, actually. But I'm back, and I'm here to catch up on a lot of book hauls that I need to show you. Believe it or not, these are from, oh gosh, around Christmas time that I haven't shown you. And I am proud to say that I haven't bought any books. I gave up book buying for Lent. I didn't really make an announcement about that. I don't think I did. But yeah, so, and I haven't missed it, actually, because I'm really having fun picking out the books that I have bought to read and to read what I have. So, but you know, after Easter, I might buy a book or two. You know me. So these books, I made a purchase at Book Outlet, and it's a mixture of history and fiction. You know that I'm primarily a history reader, but I have been branching out into other areas of fiction, especially with my book reviewing. I've been getting a lot of fiction commissions, so there's that. But I wanted to share some of the fiction and the history that I picked up at Book Outlet, and yeah, just see what you guys think. So let's start with the history first, because that's why you're here, I would imagine. This is the History Shelf. Am I in focus? I don't know. Okay. What should I start with? Let's start with this one. There's a sticker on the front I gotta work to get off. But anyway, it's a hardcover, and it was ridiculously cheap. And I don't have a proper biography of this lady. And I've been reading, I read a book for review called The First Lady of World War II, and it just made me really admire her. Just her spunk. And just her fearlessness. And I was like, I'm going to get a biography on Eleanor Roosevelt. And, oh, this stupid light is going to put a glare on it, but sorry for the sticker. That's how it arrived. But this is Eleanor by David Michaels. This came out, oh, look at that picture on the inside. Can you see that? How cute! This came out in 2020, so it's a relatively new biography. Now, I know that everyone raves about the Blanche Wiesen Cook 3-volume study, and I have been considering getting that. It's just a matter of if I want them all in hardcover or softcover. There's many different editions. It's really hard to find volume 2 for some weird-ass reason. I don't know. So anyway, but I thought I'd start off with just a 1-volume biography on Miss Eleanor Roosevelt. So let's see here. I don't think I need to read the cover, just because I've got a lot of books to show you, and I'm already 3 minutes in, so let's keep it rolling. But if you've read this book, let me know what you think about this biography of Eleanor Roosevelt. Yeah, there's a lot of fiction in here. But before I get to the fiction, I was debating on getting this book or not, just because I read so much about Abraham Lincoln. I'm like, what else can I know? But it's not necessarily about him. And I think we've seen this book on Bill Rutenberg's channel, but this is Lincoln's Mentors. It's nice hardcover. It was like $4 Book Outlet. I really like the spine that has the photos of his mentors on the back there. So the subtitle is The Education of a Leader, and this is by Michael J. Gerhardt. So it says here, okay, so it talks about like Lincoln's turnaround and why did that happen? Because, you know, in 1849 he had like two years in the U.S. House of Representatives, didn't do much, and then just kind of disappeared. But then he came roaring back in the 1860s, and it says here, what accounted for the turnaround? As Michael J. Gerhardt reveals, Lincoln's reemergence followed the same path he had taken before, in which he read voraciously and learned from the successes, failures, oratory, and political maneuvering of a surprisingly diverse handful of men, some of whom he had never met, but others of whom he knew intimately. Men such as Henry Clay, Andrew Jackson, Zachary Taylor, John Todd Stewart, and Orville Browning. From their experiences and his own, Lincoln learned valuable lessons on leadership, mastering party politics, campaigning, conventions, understanding and using executive power, managing a cabinet, speech writing and oratory, and what would become his most enduring legacy, developing policies and rhetoric to match a constitutional vision that spoke to the monumental challenges of his time. So this book is about his mentors and what he learned from them, and I thought, you know, just having read just about everything, well, not everything on Lincoln, but pretty close, this one had a nice kind of offset a little bit. Not quite on Lincoln, but Lincoln adjacent. How's that? So we have Lincoln's mentors. What else did I get? Well, I do. This is this is actually a lot of fiction I got here. Okay, let's see what we got here. So this was a little soft cover book. I was hoping it would be bigger. I don't really like the small paperback so much, but the premise was intriguing. And I think this author, his most recent book was Men on Horseback, which I don't have that one, and I don't know if, well, if I like this book, I might get it. But this is called The First Total War, Napoleons Europe and the Birth of Warfare as We Know It by David A. Bell. That cover. Ooh. So what is this about? It says the 20th century is usually seen as the century of total war, but as the historian David Bell argues in this landmark work, the phenomenon actually began much earlier in the age of Napoleon. Bell takes us from campaigns of extermination in the blood-soaked fields of Western France to savage street fighting in ruined Spanish cities to Central European battlefields where tens of thousands died in a single day. Between 1792 and 1815, Europe plunged into an abyss of destruction, and our modern attitudes toward war were born. Ever since, the dream of perpetual peace and the nightmare of total war have been bound tightly together in the Western world, where, quote, wars of liberation, end quote, such as the one in Iraq, can degenerate into gruesome guerrilla conflict. With a historian's keen insight and a journalist's flair for detail, Bell exposes the surprising parallels between Napoleon's day and our own in a book that is as timely and important as it is unforgettable. This was put out by Mariner Books. And let's see when he wrote this. 2007. Okay. So this was super cheap, and it sounded really interesting. So I picked it up. As you do when you're on a book outlet site. Ooh, what do we got here? Oh, and this book, it kept going out of stock. Every time I would put it in my cart and I go back, they're like, it's no longer available. And I'm like, son of a biscuit. But it finally came back, and I pulled the trigger on it, and I said, I have to have this. This is The Journals of Lewis and Clark, edited by Bernard DeVoto, and this is a nice Mariner Books edition. You may have a focus on that. That's Mariner Books, and this is the book itself. So you don't need to look at me. Look at the book. Look at it. This has a foreword by Stephen Ambrose, because he wrote Undaunted Courage. But I've seen this book on a couple of other booktubers channels, and I think Summer had it, and I think Mark Richardson maybe way back in the day, and so I wanted to have it. How neat is it to read their journals as they were traveling across the country? Yeah. So both Lewis and Clark kept a journal. A richly detailed record of the flora and fauna they cited, the Indian tribes they encountered, and the awe-inspiring landscape they traversed, from their base camp near present-day St. Louis to the mouth of the Columbia River. And by doing so, it says here that they made an incomparable contribution to the literature of exploration and the writing of natural history. So, yeah, just journal entries, you know. I think, so we've got the foreword by Ambrose, and then an introduction by the editor, I'm sure. Very long introduction. can see the, there you go. So, yay for me, huh? I'm really happy to have this edition. It's very nice. All it has is a remainder mark, but I'll live with it. Ooh, okay, so the next history title I picked up, another little soft cover. I had never heard of this before, and this is called The Pursuit of Italy, A History of a Land, Its Regions, and Their Peoples by David Gilmour. Here we go. I would like for that tracking to work here. Okay, so this came out in 2010 or 2011. Apparently it was a the magazine The Economist. It was its book of the year in 2011. So I'd never heard of it. It says here, did Garibaldi do Italy a disservice when he helped its disparate parts achieve unity? Was the goal of political unification a mistake? These questions are asked and answered in a number of ways in this engaging original consideration of the many histories that contributed to the brilliance and weakness of Italy today. David Gilmour's wonderfully readable exploration of Italian life over the centuries is filled with provocative anecdotes, as well as personal observations, and is peopled with the great figures of the Italian past, from Cicero and Virgil to Dante and the Medici, from Garibaldi and Cavour to the controversial politicians of the 20th century. Gilmour's wise account of the Risorgimento, the pivotal epoch in modern Italian history, debunks the nationalistic myths that surround it, though he paints a sympathetic portrait of Giuseppe Verdi, a beloved hero of the era. Gilmour shows that the glory of Italy has always lain in its regions, with their distinctive art, civic cultures, identities, and cuisines. Italy's inhabitants identified themselves not as Italians, but as Tuscans and Venetians, Sicilians and Lombards, Neapolitans and Genoese. The country's strength and culture still come from its regions, rather than from its misconceived, mishandled notion of a unified nation. That sounds about right to me. That does sound right. And there you have it, The Pursuit of Italy. It's got some insert, black and white stuff on the inside, so cool. Yeah, this came out in 2011. Happy to find it and take it. Two more books of nonfiction here. I had never heard of this. Now, I've heard of this author, obviously. This is Richard Wright, and he wrote a book called Pagan Spain. And this is a Harper Perennial Modern Classics, and a nice edition celebrating the centennial of his birth, Richard Wright. So look at that. Pagan Spain by Richard Wright. There's our author on the back there. So he wrote Native Son, obviously, and it says here, a master chronicler of the African-American experience, Richard Wright brilliantly expanded his literary horizons with Pagan Spain, originally published in 1957. The Spain he visited in the mid-20th century was not the romantic locale of song and story, but a place of tragic beauty and dangerous contradictions. The portrait he offers is a blistering, powerful, yet scrupulously honest depiction of a land and people in turmoil, caught in the strangling dual grip of cruel dictatorship and what Wright saw as an undercurrent of primitive faith. An amalgam of expert travel reportage, dramatic monologue, and arresting sociological critique, Pagan Spain serves as a pointed and still relevant commentary on the grave human dangers of oppression and governmental corruption. So yeah, I mean, this was on Book Outlet, and I was like, what? Never heard of it. By Richard Wright. So I was like, I'm down with Spanish history as well, so yes, please. Okay, so I have a couple of books by this gentleman. This is more of like theology, religion, and it looks like he co-authored this book. The other book I have by Paul Copan is called Is God a Moral Monster? I mean, really just evocative title. Really just grabs you in your guts. And this one is called Did God Really Command Genocide? Coming to Terms with the Justice of God. This is by Paul Copan and Matthew Flanagan. It's put out by Baker Books. a prominent Christian theological publisher. So this book came out in 2014. And, you know, having read his other stuff, I wanted to, especially with Is God a Moral Monster, I wanted to read this because it seemed like it just kind of went hand in glove with that. It says here, would a good, kind, and loving deity ever command the wholesale slaughter of nations? We often avoid reading difficult Old Testament passages that make us squeamish and quickly jump to the enemy-loving, forgiving Jesus of the New Testament. And yet the question remains. In the tradition of his popular Is God a Moral Monster, Paul Copan teams up with Matthew Flanagan to tackle some of the most confusing and uncomfortable passages of Scripture. Together they help the Christian and non-believer alike understand the biblical, theological, philosophical, and ethical implications of Old Testament warfare passages. And if you follow my channel for any length of time, you've seen and in fact I have a little playlist of theology book hauls, or just the theology books in my library. I read theology, I'm a Christian, and this is very intriguing and relevant to me as a believer. So I picked that one up. Now, I think we're moving into the fiction area. Got a little bit of everything. I got some highbrow stuff, and I got some lowbrow stuff, because you got to have a little bit of each, right? Make it interesting. I think this is supposed to be a trilogy, but I think I've got the first 2 books now. I do like reading literature, contemporary fiction that focuses on different lands. I'm currently reading a massive novel set in India in the 20th century. And I'm really enjoying it. Now this one takes us to Africa. And I hope I'm pronouncing the author's name correctly. And it's translated from the French. Patrice, I think the N is silent. I'm gonna say Patrice Genang. Okay, and this is the first book in the trilogy of novels. So this is fiction. This is called When the Plums Are Ripe by Patrice Genang. This is a very nice Picador edition. So the second book is in hardcover. It says here, this is the second volume. I thought this was the first volume. That's the second volume. Let's back up. So I have in hardcover the first volume of this trilogy. It's a trail of crab tracks. There we go. A Trail of Crab Tracks by Patrice Genang. Okay, this is a Farrar, Straus and Giroux edition, but I got a really sweet deal on this hardcover. It says here, for the first time, Nithhop flies across the world to visit his son, Tanu, in the United States. After countless staticky phone calls and transatlantic silences, he has agreed to leave Bangui, the city in western Cameroon where he has always lived, where he became a doctor and, despite himself, a rebel, where he fell in love and where his children were born. When illness extends his stay, his son finds an opportunity to unravel the history of the mysterious man who raised him, following the trail of crab tracks to discover the truth of his father and his country. At last, Nithhop's throat clears and his voice rises, and he drifts back in time to tell his son the story that is burned into his memory and into the land he left behind. He speaks about the civil war that tore Cameroon apart, about the great men who lived and died, about his soldiers, his martyrs, and his great loves. As the tale unfolds, Tanu listens to his father tell the history of his family and the prayer of the blood-soaked land. Okay, so I really thought this was the first. I'm getting them all wrong. Apparently this is the third part of a magisterial trilogy. I'm missing the first one. Oh no! I think what I had intended to do was to buy the first one, and then I would show you all three. You guys, I'm so sorry. This is the third book in the trilogy. When the Plums Are Ripe is the second book. It is the first one. Oh, Mount Pleasant. That's right. So Mount Pleasant is and I'm trying to find that one, but this is the second book in the trilogy. I'm going to stop talking about this trilogy, but it's set in Cameroon. I think the writer or the narrator like leaves, or he's there, then he leaves, and he comes back. Anyway, I have volumes 2 and 3 because they were extremely marked down, and I'm like, yeah, you can find Mount Pleasant. You'll find out the first version real quickly, and I never did because then I got sick. So, sorry about that, but it sounds interesting, does it not? It does to me. Like I said, I enjoy reading literature in translation. So, okay. This is a book of short stories, and I've read this author. She's editing this, and what a nice edition, although the dust jacket's a little dirty. It's a hardcover Penguin Classics. You don't see many hardcover of the Penguin Classics, right? This is the Penguin book of Italian short stories, edited by Jumpa Lahiri. Let's get it. There you go. Look at that nice cover. A little abstract art action going on there. Just for the fact that it's a hardcover Penguin Classics alone, I was like, I want this. So this landmark collection brings together 40 writers that reflect over 100 years of Italy's vibrant and diverse short story tradition, from the birth of the modern nation to the end of the 20th century. Who do we have here? This wide-ranging selection, curated by Lahiri, includes well-known authors such as Italo Calvino, Elsa Morante, and Luigi Pirandello, alongside many captivating new discoveries. More than a third of the stories featured in this volume have been translated into English for the first time, several of them by Lahiri herself. So, and Lahiri, apparently, she's written at least 3 books in Italian herself. I read one of her books ages ago. Was it The Interpreter of Maladies? That might have been it. Or there's another one by her that's very popular. But it's a nice book of short stories, and I've been trying to branch out in my my literary readings and to not stray from, not to avoid short stories. I don't know why I do. I kind of really tend to go for really big and bodacious books, but this is beautiful. So, I wanted to get that. Okay. What do we have here? Now we've got some other fun items. Let's stick with the more highbrow, then we're going to descend. Then we're going to descend, everybody. 22 minutes. All right. So I heard about this author through a podcast I was listening to. He's a Greek writer. His name is Nikos Kazantzakis. Kazantzakis. He wrote this book, and he's well known for this book. And I haven't shown you yet. I bought a few more of his books, not through Book Outlet, but they had his classic here, and I just decided to pick up Zorba the Greek. Because, like I said, I picked up some other of his works, and again, a work in translation. And this is a new translation by Peter Bien. And I'm sure many of you have heard of Zorba the Greek. It was an international bestseller. And make sure there we go. I'm trying to get my tracking to work. Okay. It's fun times. An international bestseller and inspiration for the Oscar-winning film starring Anthony Quinn, Zorba the Greek uses the tale of an unlikely friendship between a cerebral mine owner and his boisterous foreman to explore the eternal duel between the spiritual and material worlds. Zorba has been acclaimed as one of the truly memorable creations of literature, a character in the great tradition of Falstaff and Sancho Panza. His years have not dimmed the gusto with which he responds to all that life has to offer, whether he's confronting mad monks in a mountain monastery, embellishing tales of his past adventures, or making love to save his soul. Zorba's acceptance and celebration of the joys and sorrows that living brings is contagious. This is one of the great life-affirming novels of our time, and don't we all need some life-affirming in this day and age, right? I am trying to get the focus to work. I really apologize. But Zorba the Greek. Okay. So Book Outlet has this book, which I almost reviewed. And then I wanted to get there's a sequel to it. that just came out that I wanted to sign up for to review, and I'm like, well, I'd like to read the first book first. This is set in India, and this is a really nice Harper Perennial Modern Classics, another one, softcover. This is The Space Between Us by Thriti Umrigar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Space Between Us. The Space Between Us is an intimate portrait of a distant yet familiar world. Set in modern-day India, it is the story of two compelling and achingly real women. Sarah Dubash, an upper-middle-class Parsi housewife whose opulent surroundings hide the shame and disappointment of her abusive marriage, and Bhima, a stoic illiterate hardened by a life of despair and loss who has worked in the Dubash household for more than 20 years. A powerful and perceptive literary masterwork, author Thriti Umrigar's extraordinary novel demonstrates how the lives of the rich and poor are intrinsically connected, yet vastly removed from each other, and how the strong bonds of womanhood are eternally opposed by the divisions of class and culture. So that's really intriguing to me. And I'm kind of getting a dry run right now with this huge novel I'm reading set in India. The class and culture is definitely coming into play. So this is the first book. The second book just came out, and it's called The Secrets Between Us. So the story continues. I'll probably pick that up as well. But I started off with this one. So this is a tiny little novel I saw a while ago. This was marked down to like $1.95. It sounded interesting. It's a little hardcover. Probably once I read it, we'll probably just give it to the library or, donate it or whatever. This is called Apartment by Teddy Wayne. Slim little volume. I like the cover. It's kind of like it has that, that Netflix series You about it. Like this, the guy's like just watching, like stalker. It's kind of freaky. It says here, in 1996, the unnamed narrator of Apartment is attending the MFA writing program at Columbia. And that also sounds like the first season of You. The girls in an MFA writing program. Okay. I just recently started binging that while I was sick. I didn't think I would like it, but apparently I really do like that first season. So the narrator is attending an MFA writing program at Columbia on his father's dime and living in an illegal sublet of a rent-stabilized apartment. Feeling guilty about his good fortune, he offers his spare bedroom rent-free to Billy, a talented, charismatic classmate from the Midwest, eking out a hand-to-mouth existence in Manhattan. The narrator's rapport with Billy develops into the friendship he's never had due to a lifetime of holding people at arm's length, hovering at the periphery, feeling fundamentally defective. But their living arrangement, not to mention their radically different upbringings, breeds tension neither man could predict. Interrogating the origins of our contemporary political divide and its ties to masculinity and class, Apartment is a gutting portrait of one of New York's many lost, disconnected souls by a writer with an uncommon aptitude for embodying them. I wonder if this has any type of overtones with Red Pill, another book I recently purchased that I still need to get to. Wondering about the politics of his new roomie, where that comes into play. So, just a little fiction read. I felt like very peckish when I was like, I feel like fiction on this book haul, on this book order. I am gonna just load up on some of these cheap fiction, and I did. All right, here's a guilty pleasure, and I need to go back and catch up on the series, but because they keep cranking these out. I've always been a big fan of the Inspector Pendergast, is it Pendergast? Pendergast, yes, Pendergast. The FBI agent guy, Preston and Child, baby. These two dudes right here. I started with Relic a long time ago, and I just kept going. But I'm a few behind these, but these are like two of their more recent novels, and I want to own the whole set, and I have everything up until some of these more recent ones, and they were so dirt cheap and in hardcover, so I said, let's go for it. So I picked up Crooked River. It's a Pendergast novel. I don't really need to read you the descriptions because they've got like, 20 books in the series so far, but he's a really interesting type of Agent Pendergast, and he's so cultured and suave. He's kind of like an albino, I guess, almost, and because they make a big play about that in the books, but he's he knows everything about everything. I mean, the guy is just like Mr. Culture defined, you know. And he's from like Louisiana, so there's always like when he returns to this one looks like it's set in Louisiana. This is versus For the Dead. You can see the above ground like tunes in New Orleans and stuff. So yeah, so I just had to get these. These were the more recent ones, but not quite. There's still a couple more that came out just recently. I need to catch up on them. They are my guilty pleasure. Those are the kinds where, like, if I am not wanting to think, but just enjoy a good fiction read that, you know, kind of goes in some weird directions, sometimes paranormal, supernatural, it can be fun. So, what can I say? Preston and Child, baby. All right, and then here's a big chunkster of a book. It was super cheap, and what else has he written? I don't know, but it sounded good. Big, nice big soft cover edition of The Company by Robert Little. It's a novel of the CIA. That was super cheap. It's a nice Overlook Press edition. It says here, this critically acclaimed blockbuster from internationally renowned novelist Robert Little seamlessly weaves together history and fiction to create a multi-generational, wickedly nostalgic saga of the CIA, known as The Company, to insiders. Racing across a landscape spanning the legendary Berlin base of the 50s, the Soviet invasion of Hungary, the Bay of Pigs, Afghanistan, and the Gorbachev Putsch, The Company tells the thrilling story of agents imprisoned in double lives, fighting an amoral, elusive, formidable enemy, and each other, in an internecine battle within the company itself. A brilliant, stunningly conceived epic thriller adapted as a TNT miniseries. Well, I didn't watch it. Yes, but I love Cold War stuff and espionage and spy stuff, so this sounded just right up my alley. Nice big read too. I like the commitment. Always interested in finding a new mystery series, and this one was like $1, and I was like, yes. This one won the Mystery Writers of America First Crime Novel Award winner. This is put out by Minotaur Books. This is Nev March. That's the name of the author. It is Murder in Old Bombay. Look at that. That is a really nice cover, too. And I think there's a new book out as well, which kind of attracted me to it, because I like to kind of go back and, start from the beginning. It says, in 1892, Bombay is the center of British India. Nearby, Captain Jim Agnihotri lies in Pune Military Hospital, recovering from a skirmish on the wild northern frontier, with little to do but reread the tales of his idol, Sherlock Holmes, and browse the daily papers. The case that catches Captain Jim's attention is being called the crime of the century. 2 women fell from the busy university's clock tower in broad daylight. Moved by Adi, the widower of one of the victims, his certainty that his wife and sister did not commit suicide, Captain Jim approaches the Parsi family and is hired to investigate what happened that terrible afternoon. Based on a true story and set against the vibrant backdrop of colonial India, Murder in Old Bombay brings this tumultuous historical age to life. So there you have it, guys. That is my book outlet book haul. Let me know what you think about the dogs are barking. Martine's back home, so I got to wrap up this video. Let me know what you think about the. Let me know what you think about these books below. We're having some funny antics going on here, and please join me again. I'll have more books to show you. I'm catching up on all of the books I've bought. So until next time, BookTube. I hope you're having a good one. Take care.